Hello, and welcome to the DEI Consortium Lowell's Candidate Spotlight for Monday, October 18th, 2021. The DEI Consortium Lowell is a grassroots organization of community members whose mission is to, oops, I just lost my page, sorry, whose mission is to, sorry, technical difficulties. Dismantle racism, amplify unheard voices, and lead impactful change, lead impactful action for a just and equitable Lowell. The purpose of the DEI Candidate Spotlight is to provide an opportunity for you to hear from candidates from Lowell City Council and School Committee, particularly their track records and priorities around diversity, equity, and inclusion. My name is Sue Kim, and I'm a resident of Lowell and co-chair of the DEI Consortium's Communications Committee. Tonight, we will be spotlighting two candidates. Dave Ouellette, who is running for City Council in District 7 from 7 to 7:30. And then from 7:30 to 8, Robert Gignac, who's running for City Council in District 2. Each candidate will introduce themselves briefly. Then we will ask them about their thoughts on the Racism is a Public Health Crisis letter from 2020, which was signed by over 1,500 individuals and community organizations. Then we will have time for questions and answer. While our focus here is on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we welcome questions of concern to all community members. So I will stop my share. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dave Ouellette, and I'll turn the floor over to him to introduce himself, tell us a little bit about the seat that he's running for, about his background, and some of his priorities.
Well, thank you, Sue, for putting this together. I see Yanju is on now. And so my name's Dave Ouellette. I'm running for District 7, pretty much the acre and a little piece of the Lower Highlands. I've been representing and being part of our neighborhood and trying to bring change for many, many years now, about 15 years, from the crime to the drugs but one of my biggest part has been making it about all of us forever. Started off with the Welcome Rainbow because the only way to get our community together and our people closer is because when you sing, you dance, you eat food together, you experience other cultures, entertainment and all that stuff. Next time you're walking down the street, you say, hey, I know you. Hey, how you been? You're in Market Basket, you're standing in line, you turn around, you give a little nod, and the community starts building. Then the next time there's an event, more people show up. They said, what a great time. Then we have music from all the different cultures too. So it just grows and grows. It took on a life of its own. And then the next one I did was I took an old alleyway and turned it into Decatur Way, Water, Art, and You, and it's all about art because that's another way to change a community. So we took a lift of plywood, made hundreds of sheets. I worked with Youth Build America, another great organization, and it's about everybody there also, and UTEC and the rest, and the children did an incredible job at helping bringing us all together. So we had all the boards primed and all four sides, and then we had paint that we had from Harmon's Paint, and we had the primary colors was black and white. We made little bottles out of the gallons, and we just released them to every different culture, to the church groups, to the things, to the schools, to anybody that we can. And we said, bring something back that means your community, something that means together, something that about all of us. And the artwork that came back was just incredible from everybody. And we had a beautiful ribbon cutting, but we took an alleyway that was full of drugs and crime and overgrowth and everything else. And now it's such a gorgeous place that if you're walking down the street, a mother will take her baby carriage and actually walk down it and have her kids. You see little tricycles going down it. It made it a comfortable place. But the best part is they get to experience everybody's culture. The artwork is just incredible. The colors are vibrant. The high school for the 2017, I think it was, or 18 class project, there's a huge mural over there. Just about 2 months ago, I did an unveiling of a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous Latino mural, 4x8, that I work very closely with them on. And so we're constantly adding to it because it's about everybody. It's going back to the Welcome Rainbow. When we painted it, I painted it with 36 different languages. So it's all about each country's colors and italics. It's painted in a thing saying welcome. Well, the best part is is that we're going through a repainting of it right now because now there's over 70 languages. So it was so good that I have to change it to just get everybody else in. And so this is going to be an absolute huge change. The colors are going to be even more vibrant than before. And just to go to show how that work is, I talk to everybody. If anybody knows me, I just don't stop. Talk to everybody. So I know when I noticed something. So I was noticing this African gentleman always sitting on at the Welcome Rainbow. It was about a year and a half after we did it, and I'd go by, I'd be cleaning up over here, I'd be doing this over here, and all of a sudden I just see him. So I started saying hi. So one day I says to him, I said, so what brings you here? And he says, I'm sitting on caribou. I said, sitting on caribou? He goes, yes. He says, that means welcome in my country. And he says, I don't have family, I don't have anybody here, but for some reason I sit here. And he says, I feel like I'm welcome in Lowell. I feel like I'm part of the community. And that was one of the best statements I ever heard. So it shows that it's about all of us and that it's a great thing. Going on from there, I don't even know where I was now. Yes, and racism gets more serious now. Yes, and racism is a public health crisis. I am a health director. It's what I do for a living. And so when I say I live this every day. I see different things every day. I see the housing conditions. I see people when they're not feeling well. The coronavirus is a great example, which I'll get into, is what it shows that happened during the what's happening during the coronavirus epidemic and all this other stuff. Also, when I was at the city of Lowell, the Lowell, they had the Working Cities Challenge. On the Working Cities Challenge, that was a big thing by the Federal Reserve banks, and it was about bringing the community together, all the different nonprofits, everybody in one room. And I was on the DEI part of that. And one of the biggest things I pushed for on that was our council meetings. For us to be part of this community, the council meetings have to be transcribed live, not somebody reading it and then later on saying their synopsis, because it won't be. I wanted so to be live, because when I go to a meeting with somebody, it's being transcribed right beside me into any language. So why can't we have it that we have the TV going here and you turn to a certain radio station or you turn to a certain podcast or whatever, and it's translating as it goes. So when you see somebody mad and they're going like this, you actually know what they're mad about. When you see somebody smiling, or when you see somebody talking on a subject and you see another person going, no, this way you understand who the people are and who do you really want to vote for, because you're hearing it and you're seeing it firsthand. And that was one of the biggest things I fought for, and it's not completely there yet. But when I make it this council, it's going to be one of the biggest things I push for. Is I want that council meeting transcribed to as many languages as we can. And in today's world, with all the different ways with social media, there must be one that we can go on and do, just like when I'm sitting at a meeting anywhere else. When I was board chair of the CBA, we'd sit there during meetings and live. They were transcribing right there. So I don't know why it's that hard to have that happen. And that way, that will bring honest and real great change, because people will know who is really for them, who they're really not. They'll know the views and they'll understand it better. And you know what? It'll give them confidence to run. It'll give them the thing that, oh, I can do that. It won't be so foreign or so far out there to think that way anymore. I can still go on.
Well, I mean, I can switch to the. I mean, that was fantastic. So I'll just really quickly go over the. I mean, you've already talked about some of this, but
Right, I realize I can just keep on and go. Where'd you go? And go over everything we're going to talk about. But go ahead.
So again, just to revisit, the 2020 Racism is a Public Health Crisis was a letter and petition signed by over 1,500 individuals and organizations in Lowell, calling on essentially the city to dismantle systemic racism. And it outlined 5 specific steps. One, articulating and communicating the city's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Establishing protocols for data equity and integrity in Lowell, right? I mean, this is a perennial issue. Like we need to know the data. Mandating anti-racism and anti-bias training, establishing an independent civilian advisory committee to work with the police and to reallocate resources and establish an Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So really this question, it's kind of just to ask you to talk about, your thoughts on where the city has come, because it has made some progress, but also where the city needs to go, and what are some of the things that you would like to prioritize? I mean, you've already mentioned some, but to elaborate on some of those things, if you were to be elected, what kinds of things, you would really prioritize?
Well, one of the things is they're talking about how the city hall or how each department might not look like our community just yet. And I know a lot of it is in past hiring practices, and where we're going to get is going to take a little bit of time because people are still, if that job is not up for, because the person didn't retire yet or the person didn't leave yet. So some of it is we have to get it to a point where we can hire somebody next. So that's one that's just time there. But also I'm looking at that each department should have, so like when I ran I was a senior code enforcement officer for the city of Lowell. And when I was there, if you look at my hiring practices, I hired diversity. You look at what I've done in Drake too, I hire diversity. I have a great hiring practice that I practice what I say. And so the thing to be able to see more, see where our problems might be, is if we have a report from each department head. So the water department, this is this, the sewer department, this is this, the DPW, this is this, and we put the who's there in the different races right there, from the police department to the fire department to the assessor's office, this office, that office, and all of a sudden you can see where there might be disparities, where things really need to change. Because if we just put the whole thing with a bunch of names, that we need to know by department, where are we feeling, where haven't we made, or where do we have to put some more help or training, or where do we need to go? And so that's one of the biggest thing, is that break it down to departments, break it down to the things, so that way, and when we do the training, same thing, we'll be able to know that, okay, this is where we have to put some of our extra attention, maybe some of our extra funds or whatever, to be able to bring it up to the standards that we need to bring it up in the city. And the other one is work with all the nonprofits, all the other parts of the communities. It's huge. When I'm out there and I talk with youth, Bill, when I talked with the other day, I was at UTEC. I mean, we're going to be all right. This next generation is coming up is going to be incredible. I really believe that. They are so working together. I have so much fun when I did UTEC the other day. I wish I could have stayed there another hour with everybody after I was doing the question and answers with them. What a great group of people. So I see what we have coming up. We just have to get through where we are now. And that's one of the biggest things that I see. And it's going to take time, but we're getting closer. And I believe that they are trying. The city, including, yep. And then that one too is trainings. There could be more trainings again, but I answered that one kind of because if it's as we go through, we'll find the departments, we'll find our weaknesses, we'll see what it is. When I say all departments too, I mean, even like, let's say the senior center, going to the library, going to, everywhere we can go, that's part of the city's web right there, and make sure that we bring that up. Including a citizens advisory committee. And yes, and going back to with all the nonprofits, all the different groups, it'd be great to have people from these different agencies that have seen everything and have been working on this for a long time to work together. And like we see when we have boards on the outside, like when I was on the CBA, we had a person representing a bank, a person representing this, a person representing that. And so that way it's a great mix. And we could do that also with an advisory committee like that. Somebody from the police, somebody from here, somebody from there, and the outside world all at the same time. So I think I'm up to there.
Great. Thank you so much. So we have a question. I mean, can you talk about, since you are a health director, right? We were talking a little bit about this before the show started, right? And this piggybacks on the whole issue of racism as a public health crisis, right? Can you reflect on your experiences during the pandemic, right? As health director, particularly in relation to race, and then maybe some ideas or possibilities for, in terms of particularly kind of like health infrastructure, like what are some of the things that that you as a city councilor, if you were to be elected, could help push forward to improve?
All right, start with the coronavirus. Well, my regular job is I'm a health director. So when it coronavirus still very, very first hit, it was everybody was really nervous. People didn't know which way to go, and all the information was coming to us little at a time, little pieces here, little pieces there. We tried to get more information. They were learning at the same time. They give us information, and 2 days later say, no, do this instead. And so many people were struggling, the stress limits, the thing. And I can't imagine if you didn't even understand this language, and when it was coming across and you didn't have somebody to translate, and how that must have been, because if you even understood everything, you were scared. So I couldn't even imagine how it would be that if you just see everything going, then all of a sudden the stores are closed and the businesses are closed. Then you're told to stay home, then the school's closed, and then you must be going, what is going on? And you're just getting it from your friends, or you're getting it from your family, and most people get it from the younger part of the family. And so it was very hard at the beginning. People were calling, and we were doing everything we could. But then it finally got time where they were allowing the vaccination. And that's one of the things that became really struggling, is because during it, people wanted to get vaccinated. A lot of people wanted it right off the bat. But if everybody remembers correctly, it's all started off that you had to go to Gillette Stadium. And that's where it started. And they had a huge, huge clinic out at Gillette. And, they thought that might have been a good thing. But we've been working for years with, I'm a Region 3 emergency management, and we've been practicing this over and over again. If there's a pandemic, if it's this, I've been working with Lowell General Hospital. 2 months before the pandemic hit, I had an emergency meeting in Drake where we had the heads of every town, the health directors from every town, the police, the fire, the city managers, and we did, in case if there's ever a pandemic, what do we do? And we actually had that meeting just before it, and we all understood what we needed to do up to a certain point, but we couldn't get the vaccine. And we were dry over here for weeks and weeks. But where was it? It was out in Foxborough. Foxborough, the town of Foxborough, is only 16,000 people, 97% white. And where did you have to go? You had to travel from here, from Lowell, Mass, from this place to that place. We all had to travel to go to it. And if anything in the health that we've learned over time is that something in a struggling like this, in a time like this, you need to get the vaccine to the people, not the people to the vaccine. And that was one of the biggest battles we had. And for a while there, we were making all the phone calls to our local delegations, to our senators, to our congressmen. We were all saying, we need something here in the Lawrence, Lowell, tri-state area. Well, I mean, New England down here for our stuff in the Middlesex counties. And we just couldn't. And then finally, with the great work of Jody White, Lowell General, and all his partners too, we finally got to the point where we could have vaccines at that place on the boulevard, at the old Maycom building. But even with that, we were getting the vaccine trickled to us. We'd have to stop appointments because we were running out and running out and running out. I worked there, and I could see it sometimes that people, especially at the beginning, but then all of a sudden it all opened up. And some days we were doing over 3,000 vaccinations a day. I'd walk the crowd, and one of my jobs, because I didn't give the shots, but my nurse in town did, was to walk the seats after and in that waiting room. And then that's where I would see people nervous. And if I watched, so if somebody had a clenched fist or this or nervous or whatever, I would just sit beside them for a while, talk, and no matter what ethnic group, they just knew that I was friendly. Most of them understood what I was doing, and I, just helped them calm down. And we watched, and we joked, and I could get almost anybody to laugh. And so we all worked together, and most of it was a stress relief. And so we did during the pandemic right there. That was one of the worst parts. One is getting the vaccine, and the other one was getting the information out to everybody. And so that's that part. That was the was a pandemic.
Great. Thank you so much. So the next question is about housing, right? I think it's no surprise. So for example, the Community Teamwork Inc., they do a community needs assessment every year. And in 2021, both the individual level need, as well as the community level need, the top need in both was housing affordability. So, if you were to be elected as city councilor, what would or could you do to help sort of, address the issue of housing affordability in Lowell?
I like that question too. on different levels. I'll start with one level that really aggravated me in life. One of my past hats that I wore was I was a housing quality inspector for CTI. I'm trained in the state sanitary code, HUD, and DHCD inspections, guaranteeing safe, decent housing in the community. And a lot of times when I was with CTI, I'd have to travel. I did 48 cities and towns. So I went all the way from here to Lawrence, to Marblehead, to Peabody, Saugus, and I'd meet with different landlords, and we'd go over, we do the inspection on the apartments. And I remember a couple of times when landlords wanted to come on, I'd have to go and inspect the apartment, make sure that it was good, but also negotiate the rent and go over whatever else. And then sometimes I'd walk into a unit and I'd look around and I go, holy smokes, buddy, why did you even call me? And I look at their requests that they want the highest rent possible. And I go, this place is falling apart. I says, I said, you called me out here. I said, you need to, he goes, why? It's good enough for them. And that is one sentence that just would always irk me, just pull up. And I go, what do you mean it's good? Well, they're going to ruin it anyways and everything else. I say, sorry, buddy, you're not what I even want to talk to, because I have to keep coming back here to inspect this. And I wouldn't put anybody in a unit with you if you're a landlord starting off with that attitude with a program like we have right here. And I would just walk away and the person would not even be on the program. They might call and complain about me, but I'd say why, but it's just not right if you're starting off with that type of attitude. Going back to around here, the thing that I would do, and I've already been doing it, I'm very active in this community. I've been working with 8 different organizations to bring new housing to this area. I just called a meeting at St. Gina Baptist Church, the old church there, with 8 different agencies, and they all came from Gignac Credit Union, UMass Lowell, CBA, Kasajian Enterprises, TMI, and the few others. And for lack of time, I'm just going to skip all that. But the thing we're doing is we are like Lowell Housing. We're going to be putting in 52 new units over there, all workforce in development housing. CBA, they're putting in, I think it's sorry, Anju, I forget the number right there. I think it's 20 someone. Too many numbers in my head. And that one is for people who are battling the addiction issue, so that we can help them find housing, and that'll be for the one at 555 Merrimack Street. We have Gignac Credit Union putting in 32 units of affordable new condos that are to buy, but at a price that people can actually afford. So altogether, we have 250 units that I've been working with these landlords, and I get them all in these huge agencies, and I get them all in one room so we can share our experiences and share our thoughts so we can make this better, because it's about the walkability. It's one thing to give housing, but we also have to give a very safe neighborhood. So we have 8 new storefronts going in because we're thriving right there in the acre. There's a lot of ethnicity, and diversity there. So the food is incredible there. We have Sizzling Kitchen, Sophia's Cafe. We have this, we have that. My stomach don't look like this by accident. I love walking through our neighborhood and eating at the same, but the beer tie that I can go on with the thing. But we have to make it nice and walkable, because if you're there with your family, your children, and everything else, it can't just be buildings with no storefronts, with nothing there. Because at night you need to feel safe too. When there's storefronts and there's businesses open, there's lights on, there's people walking, and we got to make it a very walkable community there also. I see 724. So I'm trying to give any more time if there's another question or two, but I really believe that's what it's going to take.
So we have a follow-up question. Would you support zoning change to create ADUs in all neighborhoods in Lowell? And ADUs was it accessory dwelling unit?
Accessory dwelling. Oh, I see you're saying accessory dwelling unit. Yes. Yes, it would have to be carefully monitored. I'm very upset at where the city went when they said 3 unrelated can't live together in a unit. That's a blanket solution to a one part of a city problem. That's because of the college kids and everything else up there. But when you can't have more than 3 people unrelated in an apartment. Let's say you and I share an apartment. You get a girlfriend, boyfriend, I get a girlfriend or a boyfriend. There's 4 of us in a 2-bedroom. We've already broke that ordinance. That is completely wrong. So I'm going to go in there and go right after that rule right away. And that's going to open up housing units and everything else. There should be if somebody's worried about that, there should be a college overlay district. Okay, this happens over here. But for the rest of the city, there's people who come from different countries, which I work with a lot when I do my inspections. And a lot of times, they're even with the church groups, there's 5, 6, 8 people in an apartment, and they're not going to be related. And we can't do it. Like I've been working with the International Institute with the group of Afghans that are coming in. We're going to need housing. We're not going to have to sit there and say, well, how are you related? Who are you related to? How? That's just wrong. And according to DHCD, HUD, and Mass Housing, if you have a three bedroom, you must try to put 6. A 4-bedroom, you must try to put that. That's how the funding comes from the state, and everything else is federal. Try to talk real fast. And that's how you get the money, the money for it. So they don't follow. So if you go to River Place Towers, you go to some of these big places, they just completely ignore what the city says. So you can't enforce it on them because they will stop funding if they don't try to put 8 people in a 4-bedroom, and because they understand it. And so that's some of the stuff that has to be, and somebody that understands this needs to be able to bring this to the council floor and say, this is how we get housing for our people. This is how we get people off the street. And that's what we really need to do. So yes.
Great. Thank you. You have about a minute and a half. I mean, would you like in that minute and a half, quickly, what would be your top three priorities if you were elected as city council, particularly for your district? One
is the housing. We got to get the housing up, and we definitely have to make Merrimack Street, the upper Merrimack Street, finally connected downtown. We do that with the storefronts. Do that. We got to get our departments, like I was saying earlier, understand where we might have that weak link in each department throughout the city. That would be one of the main ones. And the very main one is going to get translation for those council meetings. That is one of my biggest priorities. I want people to understand who's talking and how they're talking and what they're saying, not being transcribed by somebody else just saying the view of what the meeting is. So that's one of the biggest ones. Like when you're nodding yes right now, I want somebody to understand that I'm talking, and that's why you're nodding yes. And that's what it's going to take to bring us together.
Great. And to clarify, the number 3 thing is, like you're saying, the departments in terms of clarifying hiring practices and where like the weak and strong parts are in terms of like diversity and fairness and transparency in the hiring practices. Correct?
Absolutely. Yes, that's my 3rd one. So
Great.
It's the hiring practices, it's getting it translated and get us housing, put people together. Let's get our housing the way that we need it. Get people off the streets at the same time. There's a lot of stuff to do. I could keep on going. We're at 7:27, but yeah. And I just want to thank everybody for putting this together. This is a great thing, and I think we're going to be going forward as a city in a great way. And I really hope to be part of the change. I really hope to be part of the change. But the only way I can be part of the change is I need you to help me for just one day, November 2nd. I need you to help me for one day, and I'll help you for 365 of them for every single other day. And I will be there. Everybody knows that I'm a working fool, and I love my neighborhood. I love my diversity. I love the people here. So please, November 2nd, come on out, vote for Davey O. He'll help you.
Thank you so much. So let's give Dave a big round of virtual applause.
Thank you all. Thank you
so much, Dave.
Yeah, bye-bye, everybody.
So we will now turn to our second candidate for the evening, Robert Gignac. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So we will follow the same format for Robert. First, we'll ask him to introduce himself, and then I will very briefly go review the letter, Racism is a Public Health Crisis, and then we will go to question and answer. So Rob, please introduce yourself, what seat you're running for, a little bit about your background, your experience with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and some of your priorities moving forward.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me this evening. My name is Robert Gignac. I'm a candidate for City Council in District 2, Centerville. I was born and raised in the city. As a kid, I bounced around to the various different neighborhoods. I was raised by a single mom. Rent was due and it wasn't there. So I had a challenging childhood up until I found my home here in Centerville. And so I've been here in Centerville for over 20 years, and I'm proud to raise my family here. My young daughter, Kennedy, who's 2, and we're expecting a baby boy in January. So I'm invested in this neighborhood in really hoping to receive enough votes come November 2nd to represent this neighborhood that's been my home for so long. Sorry, I'm just getting over a cold. Along the experience in DEI, so my day job, I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Lowell Community Charter Public School in downtown Lowell. And in that role, we serve 96% of our students are students of color. So DEI is in the work that I do each and every day, and it impacts all of my decision making. A big part of my role and our efforts over the last few years is to increase our teacher diversity. When I came aboard, we were at about 7% of our faculty were teachers of color. We made a goal to increase that over 4 years to get up to 25%, actually over 5 years. In 4 years, we've tripled that to around 24%. So we're making really tremendous progress. During that process, I partnered with the Mass Partnerships for Diversity in Education. I represent the school there, and established a partnership with Journey into Education and Teaching, which is an organization that supports Black and Brown paraprofessionals who are seeking to become fully licensed educators. And we have some phenomenal paraprofessionals and support staff that really are key to our overall operation. And so I developed that partnership and have supported a teacher apprentice program through developing my annual budget and identifying those people that I think will truly make a tremendous impact in our community and investing in them. A lot of them, dropped out of school early on to take care of families, and now we're providing support and guidance so they can obtain licensure. Also, as part of the school, we established an affinity group for our faculty. We had a great event last year with our student-led Stop Asian Hate Vigil, which was a huge success. And a big part of our overall community was represented there. I also required all of my staff to participate in anti-racism and anti-bias training, and brought forward a resolution to our board to ensure that they too take such training on an annual basis. We also incorporated cultural competency goals in our teacher evaluation rubric. So it's a big part of their success as educators is cultural competency. We also are the only school that I know of that has a full world cultures curriculum that each and every student that enters our building is exposed to. So in my day job, this is what we do. And I'm so proud to be surrounded by such talented individuals that I'm learning as we go and how we can support our community. I also am one of the founding board members of Free Soil Arts Collaborative, which elevates the voices of Black and Brown artists in our community. And I'm proud of the work that we've been able to do with that organization. And as part of really truly representing the residents of Centerville, I think I need to continue to learn on these topics and continue to engage in the difficult conversations around DEI and be a voice at the table, but also be a set of ears to be able to listen to folks on what issues are, what are new strategies that we can bring forward to ensure that we're actually doing our jobs as elected representatives. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. So I will very quickly review the Racism is a Public Health Crisis letter / petition from 2020, which called on the city to make real systemic change, but again, on racism, which laid out 5 steps, which was, first, just to articulate and communicate clearly the city's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, to establish protocols for data equity and integrity in Lowell. It's difficult to find data about, the city's workforce, for example, but unfortunately, the city is not unique in that. Many organizations have this difficulty. Mandating regular anti-racist and anti-bias training, establishing an independent civilian advisory council to work with the police, and then just establishing an office of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we'd love to hear your thoughts both on where the city, has come, right? As well as where it needs to go, and particularly some of the things that you would like to see happen, if you were to be elected.
Sure. So I'd like to just go through each step on my position on each step. And so on step number one, I think the city really failed in its efforts to identify racism as a public health crisis, as you would all agree. I certainly would have supported that resolution. I was an early signer of the letter and distributed to my faculty and staff and organizations I'm associated with to ensure that folks were engaged and involved in the decision making. And lobbied a number of counselors. I had conversations with Young Jew about who I should contact and who I should lobby about, really making sure that everybody's fully aware of this, but also understanding what the consortium is looking for in this letter. There's lots of confusion even to this day. And I think it's important that we clearly communicate those efforts across the board. When it comes to number two, I think it's not unique, as you mentioned, that Lowell doesn't have publicly accessible data to really analyze. That's an issue for me. I base my decision making off data-driven decision making. So it's important that we work with stakeholders to develop the key metrics of interest and analyze this information regularly, not only in a silo on the city council or the city administration, but as a community as a whole. Where are areas that we need to improve upon and why are there gaps? So that's a key effort, and it comes down to accountability. Once those metrics are developed and we put together a real action plan, holding the right people accountable. And at the end of the day, that comes to the city council. And as your representative, it comes on me. On number three, I think training is key, and having the appropriate stakeholders involved in selecting the training, I think, is number one. There's a lot of trainings out there that we could simply provide to our employees, to the city council, to the school committee that will check the boxes off, but really aren't having the effect or the impact that we need it to have. And then evaluating that training regularly. What's the input from the employees, from the elected bodies that are participating? Was it helpful? Was it not? What are the areas that we need to dig a little deeper in? One-time training isn't going to solve the problem. An annual training isn't going to solve the problem. It's all about continuous education on the subjects. And a lot of folks have been working in government for a long time and haven't received nearly enough training to be able to make the decisions we need them to make on a regular basis. And so DEI efforts is key in really making progress. When it comes to the Citizens Advisory Council, I think it can certainly serve as a resource. It's there now, which is moving in the right direction. I do have some concerns about how it operates. Unless you're watching, unless you request the Zoom link and really take the effort to participate, it's not an easily accessible process to participate in, which I think is an issue. So elevating that to similar to every other public body where we can really watch and view and participate regularly without any barriers, I think is key, especially when you really want the role of the group to be input from everybody, the citizens as a whole. And as a city councilor, I would help to recruit the right folks to be at that table and to use them as a resource. Tell me what's going on, what you're hearing about the police department and the issues in our neighborhoods. When it comes to number five, the city established the chief DEI officer as step one. And we need to really make sure that that position is meeting the goals and objectives that were outlined in the role. And so creating a position is great, but we need to make sure whoever's hired for that position is qualified and is able to fulfill the role to the highest degree. And to do that, we need to, as elected body, closely monitor that and also have that individual accessible to us and accessible to the community as a whole, engaged in, as mentioned in the letter, in everything from procurement to hiring practices to community engagement across the board. That's a key role the way it was described, and we need to make sure that the role as described is what we get. And as a city councilor, not only doing that piece, but ensuring there's adequate funding to support the work of the role. You can have somebody in the position with $0 in their budget and expect them to do the world, and that's just not the reality that we're in. So that's a key role in this, as a city councilor, is ensuring resources are there, ensuring the role is meeting the needs of the community and the goals and objectives that were outlined when it was created.
Great, thank you so much.
Sure.
So the next question is about housing, which is, a complicated issue on many fronts. The Community Teamwork Inc., they do an annual community needs assessment, both the individual level need as well as the community level need in 2021 was affordable housing, right? And this is, it's linked to many other issues, right? I mean, affordable housing is linked to, issues of homelessness, issues of gentrification, right? With like sort of, new places opening up, but, being priced out of people's, range and things like that. So, I mean, if you were to be elected city councilor, what are some of the things that you would do to, address the issue of particularly affordable housing, which is such an issue in Lowell?
Sure. That's a great question. I think when we talk about housing, particularly in Centerville, we're a densely populated neighborhood like many others. And ensuring that there is some developable land that is in talks right now, but we need to be sure that we're attracting the right developer, somebody that's going to come in and build affordable housing, but high quality affordable housing that is going to be safe, it's going to be clean, and it's going to be stable for people to come in and move in and have pride in our community. And listening to Dave a little bit earlier, a big issue we have in Centerville, and it's all over the place, but here in Centerville is absentee landlords and poor quality of housing, which forces people out. And so we need to make sure that we're holding landlords accountable, not only on the rents, but also on the upkeep of their facilities. And in Lowell, we have a major crisis when it comes to homeless youth. And that's something that is astonishing to me, where we have hundreds of young people that are homeless and are going to school every day and have no idea where they're going to lay their head at night. And that keeps me up at night. We have homeless students at my school, and when I was on the school committee, the numbers are unbelievable. And so as a city councilor, I want to make sure that we have affordable housing, that the affordable housing is safe, it's a productive part of our neighborhood, and that our young people are put in a position to succeed with an established affordable housing structure, I think is key. So thank you for that question.
A follow-up question is, would you support zoning change to create accessory dwelling units in all neighborhoods of Lowell?
Yeah, so I certainly would. I think it's appropriate in my neighborhood, and I think it is appropriate in all neighborhoods, to be quite frank with you, if it's done appropriately. I think, Dave also had a good point about a district for the university, which makes perfect sense when it comes to the actual issue at hand. But I would support zoning changes to create ADUs.
Great, thank you. So this question is about, the city's hiring practices and personnel, touching on some of the things that we've talked about before. But as you know, earlier this year, the city of Lowell commissioned an HR audit by CLA, and they issued a report with a number of recommendations, some of which the city has already followed, like, reconsidering the compensation for the DEI officer. But there were lots of other things. I mean, the report really said that, the city had a lot of work to do. What are your, if you were to be elected as city council, what would be some of the things that you would want to prioritize in terms of making the city's workforce in particular more, and the hiring practices more equitable, fair, and transparent?
Yeah, so I think, this question goes back to step number 2 of the letter, and really being able to have that data available so we can look at where the issues lie and develop a strategic plan on how to address those issues, and how to make investments in those areas. This costs money. There's no question about it that it costs money. But if we really want to make strides in this area, we need to put our money where our mouth is, and we need the data to be able to make those decisions. And so certainly looking at that data, and also looking deeply at the HR audit, which I think was well done, and long overdue, but looking at it regularly and not just putting it on a shelf as we constantly do in government and do studies and plans, and then it's just never looked upon again. In monitoring the progress that we make, and then evaluating our progress in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, and constantly pushing ourselves to be able to make changes and shift gears, whether it's the funding piece or what can we reasonably accomplish in 1 year, what can we accomplish in 2 years, and where do we want to be in 5 years. I think that's the way I process things, and that's the way I would approach this topic as a city councilor. It all comes down to the data, and then we make decisions and educate stakeholders and engage in a thoughtful discussion.
Thank you. So the next question, what are some of your top ideas for how the city should spend the ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act funds, that the city will be receiving soon? And I forgot the specific amount, but
Yeah, it's over 70 million. So one of the things that is clearly outlined as an allowable expenditure in the funding is infrastructure upgrades in water, sewer, utility. As a Centerville resident that lives a stone's throw away from Duck Island, not only do I want to address the odor piece of it, but really the amount of waste that goes into the Merrimack River is not okay, and it's not something we can sustain. I think an investment needs to be made there. We are making investments over time. It's too little, too late. We need to make a real investment in there to protect our environment and our drinking water, for sure. Other areas, it's exciting that tomorrow night the city council will be approving a bookmobile, which is actually something I proposed a few months ago, and the trustees brought that forward to access ARPA funds, which will be great for our neighborhood and our neighborhood kids, because it will allow access to materials and books and resources right in our neighborhood, so they don't have to venture downtown. Lowell Public Schools don't have fully functioning libraries anymore. So this is going to be it. When it rolls up to your neighborhood, that's it. Some other parts, some other ideas around the funding piece. I think we need to continue to invest in housing. We need to continue to invest in the opiate epidemic, which is on the rise again. And a lot of it has to do with COVID. And so not only investing in treatment and recovery, but prevention awareness in the schools has been a key focus of mine, but also on the homeless issue and ensuring that we have potential solutions in order. We talk about the role of the shelter, and that plays a role in our society, but at the end of the day, we need full wraparound services, 24/7 care to address mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and then we can get to housing and workforce development and getting folks back into the community. But that takes a lot of money, and it takes a lot of time and effort, but we have to be able to tackle that. And to have these one-time dollars to be able to make an initial investment, I think is huge. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity for our community when we're seeing the homeless issue really grow before our eyes.
great, thank you so much. So this is a question that we've asked several of the city council candidates, and I think it would be especially interesting given your experience. In your view, what is the role of the city council in supporting the school committee, right? What could the city council do in relation to the school committee, and what should be its role?
So that's a great question. You know, I served 2 terms on the school committee, and throughout those 2 terms, and you see it even today, that there's always this divide between the city and the schools, and it's always one after another. And you know, we really should be working as partners, and with the common goal of providing the highest quality education to our students across our city. You know, as a city councilor, it's my role to make sure that we have safe learning environments, and that's not just I don't mean like just the doors lock and the windows lock. I mean safe, that we have fully functioning HVAC units. We have, you know, safe warm learning environments, that kids want to come to school and learn, teachers want to come to school and work. We don't have that now, and we really don't have that in Centerville. Another key piece of this upcoming term is the continuous conversation of shifting to neighborhood schools, something that the school committee has looked at for years and years and hasn't been able to make that change. There's a push right now to do that. And when it comes to Centerville and across the city, we're not ready. We're not ready to do that. And you know, there's a consent decree in place to ensure our schools are desegregated. And when you look at the scenarios that have been published by the school department, there's arguments that the fact that you could have 2 minority groups at a school, if they made the change, and that's all you're going to have. That's not true diversity. That's not true diversity. Right now, you have true diversity in most of the cities, in most of the schools. Another major issue is we don't have equitable education across the city. My district has some of the poorest performing schools across the Commonwealth. And so we have to make sure we get our schools to the point where they're all high performing, where they all provide equitable education, equitable high quality education, and then we can consider making shifts. We also need an additional middle school in Centerville to be able to make that possible. We just don't have the capacity. Those are major conversations that are happening now that a city councilor would have to be involved in. And it requires investments by the city, not and the school district, but a lot of the investment comes from the city. And transportation is all included in that, because right now kids are bused all over the city, and to make these shifts, that would change. So education is a key priority of mine in my campaign, because it's such it plays such a key role in our community, and we have a lot of work to do. And in particular, we have a lot of work to do in my district.
Great. Thank you. So we have time, I think, for one more question. I think, you know, this is a sort of summary question. You know, if you were to be elected city councilor, what would be your top, say, 3 or 4 priorities, particularly for your district, but overall as a city councilor?
Yeah. So thank you for the question. I think certainly education, which we just touched upon lightly. Public safety is also a major concern across our district. And constituent services, we haven't been well represented in quite a long time, and ensuring that people have a voice at the table when decisions are being made, but also a voice at the table to elevate ideas and innovation, and fostering that that true community input, I think, is key in my campaign, and would be key in my role as a District 2 city councilor. And it's key that we have these difficult conversations around various topics with everyone in our communities and everyone in our districts, whether they want to have the conversation or not. It's so important, and I see that every day when I'm knocking on doors. Some people don't want to have the conversation and will slam the door in my face when they see DEI on my door hanger, you know, and that's not what I want to see. And I want to make sure that we have a place that I'm proud, continue to be proud to raise my family, and I'm able to make decisions with the full support of our constituency. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Robert Gignac. Do we have any more questions? Then let's give Rob a big virtual round of applause. Thank you. I hope you feel better soon. There's definitely been some cold bug going around.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. We will be back next Monday at 7 p.m. On Zoom or LTC Channel 8 with Jackie Doherty, a candidate for school committee at large, and Eric Gitcher. So we will see you then. Have a good night.